What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Reseller Greatness Podcast. I think we've got to be somewhere in the 80s now, and it has been beyond a pleasure to, do these podcasts on a weekly basis and hopefully spark something inside of your imagination or help you and your business. So I do hope that the podcasts are helpful. I do hope that the videos are helpful in some way, shape, or form for you and your business because it's tough. It's very tough. Things are constantly changing, things are evolving. When something is working, it stops working, and then you got to try something else. Maybe reinvent yourself or reinvent what you are doing. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like that's life and that's business. And one of the examples of a really big change that eBay has started to implement as of June 24th, 2025, in the UK, Australia, Italy, Spain, and a few other countries over in Europe. And I'll say it again: the UK, Australia, Italy, Spain, and a couple other countries in Europe, not in the United States, not in Canada, as of yet or as of at all. But they have tweaked the promoted listings, how they are counting and tagging certain items and how it will trigger a promoted listing sale and fee. So the way when promoted listings first started, it had to be, I don't know, around 2015 or so. It was pretty straightforward. You would forfeit a percentage on top of the final value fee for any item that was clicked on and bought through a promoted listing search entry in the ranks. So when you first did promoted listings, it pretty much like guaranteed you like the top slot in search. And if you said, hey, I will voluntarily forfeit and hand over and pay 5%, if that was your threshold or your, bid, then you would get a final value fee of the original 13%, plus the 5% if your listing sold if a buyer clicked that promoted listing entry in search, and then and only then. If they clicked an organic entry, you would not get charged a promoted listing. Shortly after that, I don't know, a couple, revolutions of the seller update, they started to add the promoted listings percentage to your shipping, where they didn't used to do that. It just used to be on the item cost. So if you sold an item for $10 plus $5 shipping, it would be a $10 promoted listings fee. The $5 was promoted listing fee free, where then they started to add the promoted listings fee onto the shipping price. Shortly after that, a couple more revolutions of the fall seller updates. They increased the minimum promoted listing allowance from 1% to 2%. And now the minimum that you could do is now 2%. Did that saturate the promoted listings pool by 1%? Probably so. So if you were used to promoting at 5%, now you probably get 4% in promoted listing value because it has inched up. And there will be a day eventually where, the minimum turns to 3 to 4 to 5. And then the floor becomes 5% minimum on promoted listings. When that happens, who knows? But, eventually it will. And then they started to institute different kinds of promoted listings where in the past, in the original implementation, it was a flat percentage that you were voluntarily paying. And then they instituted the dynamic rate, which eBay would look at the market, assess the market, and they would fluctuate your rate based on what everybody else is doing, with no proof or no evidence. Just you got to kind of take their word for it. And that's pretty much how the whole thing is set up as far as promoted listings goes. And if you say, hey, I will bid 5%, but I'm okay with you bringing it up to 10%, if that's what we got to do, then that's what eBay would do if it deemed necessary in order for you to get the sale. So then they had this dynamic rate that would go up and down and up and down. And the dynamic rate was always the default rate once it was implemented. And I believe very smartly by eBay that, by design, because a lot of people are civilians, a lot of people are laymen, a lot of people are part-timers, a lot of people are not experts or professionals. where they're not listening to this podcast, like getting the latest and greatest information. And they're just kind of going with the flow and just kind of clicking buttons and going with what eBay recommends. And the issue with the dynamic, and we've talked about it before on the channel at length in a podcast. I think it was the third podcast on the channel. So like 79 weeks ago, we've talked about how the dynamic rate is very dangerous for eBay because, like an Amazon repricer, that their job is to get you one penny under the competition in order to get you a sale. So an Amazon repricer, if I'm at $10 and you're at $10, the Amazon repricer will put you at $9.99. So you'll get the buy box and you'll get the sale. Well, I don't like that. So my Amazon repricer will go to $9.98. You go to $9.97, $96, $95, $92, like all the way down to zero sometimes, like 1 penny items because Amazon repricers are fighting. So since it is at a dynamic rate and it is looking at the market, it will inch up by design because if everyone is at 10, then the new dynamic rate becomes 10.1. Then the new dynamic rate becomes 0.2, 0.3, 11, 12, 13. And 79 weeks ago, like we talked about, like, hey, you're going to start seeing recommended rates 10 plus, 15 plus. Sometimes even people report seeing like 20 plus recommended rates when they're setting up their promoted listings campaign. So, that's something that we have to keep in mind, and we have to know and understand that is happening. And when this dynamic rate pushes up by design, because that's what it's supposed to do, you start to see diminishing returns if you are doing a flat fixed rate, because if it is superseded by the dynamic, you're seeing those diminishing returns because you're not getting, the bang for the buck. And then after that, eBay started to implement kind of the pay per click, where you would bid on a keyword and say, you know what, I'm going to bid on the word vintage. It's 10 cents. This kind of campaign can be a bit dangerous because previously it was a pay per sale model where you only pay the promoted listings when your item's sold. The pay per click means you're paying every single time someone enters that search term, whether or not they buy your item or not. So that one can be a bit dangerous because if you pick a very common word, like you could be paying a lot of money on the pay per click routine if you do have that kind of thing set up. After that, they started doing the offsite campaigns, which for me personally, I think like the offsite campaigns or the pay per click is probably better suited or set up for people that have a multi-quantity or a replenishable or some sort of widget. I don't know if it's the best bang for the buck or the best value for people that are selling one-off items, because you're paying for this click or you're running an offsite ad and then your item sells. So if you do have multi-quantity, let's say you're selling iPhone cables or phone cases or something like that, the pay per click and the offsite ad can probably be pretty beneficial. But for most folks in the thrifting model, the garage sale, flea market, reseller model, where we have quantity one, I don't know if you want to spend a lot of money to drive people to your single item. Once it sells, it's out of stock. So, they've been getting very, very creative with the promoted listings. They also started to implement what's called a halo attribution, where if a buyer clicks on your promoted listing and then finds another one of your items as an organic search, eBay still takes credit for that. So like if they click on your organic, they go to your store and they buy something, or if they click on your promoted, they go to your store and buy something organic, eBay still takes credit for that. So now, by like indirect clicks, they were able to still charge a promoted listings fee. And I remember I when I had my eBay World Domination store, and if people aren't familiar, they're just listening to the podcast for the first time. Once upon a time, it wasn't that long ago. It was actually 1 year ago around this time. We're recording this in May. It was actually 1 year ago around this time where my eBay World Domination store came to a close. And, now it allows me to, live the journey and live the life that I am now, which I am very, very and extremely fortunate to do so. But I had 50,000 items. We were selling 250 to 300 items per day. We were listing 250 items per day and doing a couple $1 million in sales every single year. But I used to have people who knew what time of day I listed every single day. They knew that I would finish at like 4 p.m. every single day. All the listings would be up. And they would go in there and they would shop my store. They wouldn't go to ebay.com and find me in search. They would go to ebay.com/str/tech and sports, go straight to my store, sort by newly listed, bang, 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 buy 10 items, 15 items, 20 items every single day. I had people that shopped exclusively from me. If you look at their feedback, not another soul on their feedback except for me. And I would notice I would be getting whacked with promoted listing sales and fees for people that were shopping my store on a daily basis because they knew my listings were done. So in no way, shape, or form or fashion should I have been getting dinged a promoted listings fee for those buyers, but I was. And once they kind of latched on as like someone who was getting charged a promoted fee, like it didn't end, it didn't stop. So like it transformed that person from like an organic shopper because they found it on their own, not through search, into now they were always a promoted shopper from here on out. And like it probably costed me like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, maybe $10,000 plus. And there was really no way to prove it. I just had to, swallow it and just keep moving forward and, keep listing more items and keep getting better items. And, that's really all we can really do sometimes when, we are playing in someone else's sandbox and we're playing by their rules and, it's their ball. And like, if we don't like it, we can't take the ball and go home. Like we just go home. So now they are starting to implement, like I said, in UK, Australia, Italy, Spain. They've already implemented it in Germany, where if you are running a promoted listings campaign and a buyer, any buyer clicks on your item, they do not buy, they log off of eBay and never, ever, ever come back, and somebody else finds that listing organically in search, you will still get charged a promoted listings fee. So I'll say it again. You run a promoted listings campaign, anybody in the world clicks on the listing, they do not buy it. Someone else finds your listing organically, eBay is going to attribute that to a promoted listing sale, and you will get a final value fee of a promoted listings final value fee on that particular sale because someone somewhere out there in the world of 8 billion people clicked on the promoted listing entry, didn't buy, but they clicked on it. Therefore, now eBay is going to take credit for the sale. So, at the peak of my business, when I was selling millions of dollars, if all of my sales were eventually transformed into promoted listing sales, which if you look at what they're trying to do, and, it's pretty brilliant on eBay's end. And like, I am not an eBay apologist. I look at everything from the objective perspective. Like eBay is a company. eBay has shareholders. eBay needs to raise profit, raise revenue, sell more items quarter over quarter. And that is the job of the CEO. And that is the job of all 11,500 people that work at eBay. They need to sell more items. They need to make more money. They need to bring in more revenue. Like that is their job. And that's our job for our business as well. So like if this CEO doesn't do that, raise revenue, raise money, raise profits, raise sales, if he doesn't do that, they get him up out of here and they will find somebody else who will. So like he's doing his job, eBay is doing their job. And it is rather brilliant that they are creating ways, whether we like it or not. I certainly don't like it, but whether we like it or not, they are figuring out creative ways to get more money without acquiring any new buyers, without acquiring any new sellers, and without any additional sales on the platform. They are getting creative ways to get more money to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. If you listen to the investor calls or you read the quarterly updates, like hundreds of millions of dollars are attributed to promoted listings fees that once upon a time, eBay had none of that. They just had the straight final value fee. So like they have a room full of very, very, very smart people who sit around all day and say, how can we make more money without any new buyers coming on the platform, without any new sellers coming on the platform, and without selling any additional items on the platform? And what they're doing, the writing is on the wall. As we talk about a lot, they are telling us what they want to do. Whether we agree with it, whether we like it, whether we think it's fair, none of that matters. They are telling us what they are going to do. They are telling us through their actions what they want to do. What they want to do is capture as many promoted listing sales as possible because that is an automatic pay raise for them. And just like us, we need to sell as many items as possible, make as much money as possible. We can't hate the player, we got to hate the game. Like they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. We don't like it. It's not great, but that's just how it goes. And if you stick around in this business for long enough, or any business for long enough, there's something that I was talking to a friend of mine a couple of days ago, and I have worked and done business, especially being here in South Florida, um, with a lot of people from Haiti, a lot of Haitian people. Haitian people are very proud. They're very hardworking. They're very good people. You can tell that they have a very good soul. They've always been nothing but friendly for me. And one of the people that I worked with when I first started my landscape company was a guy named Louis. He was from Haiti. And, I used to just ask him just out of like curiosity, like what was life like in Haiti, this and that. And one day I looked up like, what is the yearly annual salary in Haiti? And it was like $34. So like, it's a very like impoverished country. But again, very hardworking people treated me with nothing but respect. And one of the things that Louis taught me very early on in my landscape company, my landscape career, that stuck with me even until this day. We were doing a job, we didn't finish the job, and we had to work on Saturday. So I asked a couple of guys, hey, do you want to work? They're like, nah, I got things to do. I want to go home, want to hang out, want to relax. No problem, man. Like, we work hard. Like, I understand, I get it. But at the end of the day, like, it's my company, my job. My money is on the line, so I can't afford to have like this job go on for 2 weeks. Like, we got to get this thing done. But no problem. Like, you got to stay home. You want to relax. You want to take a couple of days off. I get it. It's hot. It sucks. We're digging holes. I understand. No problem. But I could always count on Louis if I needed more help. And I remember one day, one of the jobs not only ran over to Saturday, but it ran over to Sunday. And getting people or trying to get people to work on Sunday is damn near impossible. Even your friends, like trying to get your friends to help you move on Sunday is damn near impossible. Like trying to get anyone to do anything on Sunday is impossible. And rightfully so. Like, people rest on that day. Maybe people got church. Maybe people got birthday parties, obligations. Maybe they just want to chill. But I knew I could always count on Louis. And I asked Louis and I said, hey, how come you never turned down like working on Saturday? You never turned down working late. You never turned down working on Sunday. And Louis would always say, bills come every day. And, the moment he said that, like, it really kind of transformed who I was and what I do. And that's a large reason why, even to this day, as someone who is very, very fortunate, like, that's why I go 7 out of 7 days. Like, the bills come every single day. Like, we accrue something in this world every single day. So like, we should be doing something positive and productive every single day. And with Louis having that attitude, like it really transformed everything inside of me. So like, I could have early on in my eBay reselling career listed Monday through Friday, took the weekends off and got back on it on Monday. There's nothing wrong with that. But I knew working Saturday and Sunday, I was getting ahead of everybody else. Like, 30% ahead of everybody else. And if you do that over 1 month, like, you have an extra week over everybody else. Like, everyone is working 4 weeks, you're working 5. And just doing that, having that mind state of the bills come every day, it really got me far, far ahead of everybody else around me in terms of sourcing, listing, building my business, compounding that, building that snowball going downhill that eventually gets impossible to stop. It's not start and stop. It's continuously ever going, never ends, just accumulating this mass of a snowball rolling downhill. And I put a lot of credit towards my success to the mentality of the bills come every day. And that was just a simple, one-off comment by a guy sitting next to me in an old truck, after we're both drenched after digging holes all day. And he was ready and eager to get up tomorrow morning early and work on a Sunday where, the rest of the world wasn't. And, a lot of times in this business, like we have to be self-starters. We have to put our boots on the ground every single day when most people in a conventional job clock out at 5, go to work at 9, have Saturday and Sunday off. But like this thing that we do, sometimes like we don't have that ability. And I think that that's the trade, the trade in being able to do something for yourself versus being able to do something from someone else. And like we have two choices. We can wake up every single day and work on our dream, or we could wake up every single day and get hired to work on somebody else's dream. And by doing this every single day, we're like the captain of our own ship, and we get to dictate what we're going to do on our terms, our time. But in order to do that, like in order to have the freedom to do that, like it's a conundrum, like it's like a paradox. Like in order to have the freedom to wake up and do whatever you want to do today, there's a series of events of things that you must do every day in order to have that freedom to wake up tomorrow and do whatever you want to do. So like the paradox is like, in order to have freedom, you have to do a bunch of stuff that you don't want to do in order to wake up tomorrow and get the freedom, and still do stuff that you don't want to do in order to have tomorrow's freedom. So, just kind of like thinking about all of this stuff and kind of, just thinking about all of the changes. And in this business and in every business, like nothing ever stays the same. You will find something that works and it doesn't work. You'll find a honey hole, and then all of a sudden someone else is there, or they raise the price, or they go out of business, or they change their structure and it doesn't work. You'll find some sort of strategy and then it doesn't work. You'll find, some sort of keyword and then it doesn't work. You'll find some method of running your business where like you think you've got it all figured out and then it doesn't work anymore. And I think like us as humans, like we want to be comfortable. We want to figure out ways how to like set it and forget it. But I honestly don't think that like that's the way it works. And through every single twist and turn and every single final form of my business, like I thought I have evolved into my final form. And like, that's just the form of the time. Like all of our businesses are like a book, and every iteration of our business is just a chapter inside of the book of our business. And once that chapter is done, you turn the page and you begin writing a new chapter, which brings me to like another one of the things that, really, really stuck with me. So again, like doing a lot of business with Haitian people, doing a lot of, Louis was my guy. Like one of the things, again, that really stuck with me is a saying that goes, Deyaman Giman. And I believe I'm doing it justice in Creole, Deyaman Giman, which means behind mountains, there are mountains. So like you think that you climb this huge mountain and you get to the precipice and you've accomplished so much, and you turn around and look down at all the hard work that you've done. And then Deyaman Giman, like there's another mountain in front of you. And that is the reality of business, is that you think you've got it all figured out and then it no longer works. So like there's a lot of people who are in Europe right now, where the policy that we were just talking about, in the UK, Australia, Spain, Italy, Germany, other countries in Europe, France, who had their business all the way worked out. And let's say that 50% of their sales were attributed to promoted listings. Once this policy took over in Germany, which it already has, there have been reports that people have reached out and told me that everyone's sales overnight went to 100% promoted listings. Now, when I had my big eBay store of 50,000 items and I did $2.5 million in sales per year, my promoted listing strategy was at 10% back then. And about 40% of my sales were attributed to promoted listing sales. So what I was doing was I was voluntarily handing over money to eBay, $100,000 extra additional in fees for eBay to bring me $1 million more in sales. So about 40% of my sales were attributed to promoted listings. So I was giving $100,000 in extra fees for $1 million in sales. And I was okay doing that. And I think if we could all spend 100,000 and get back 900,000, like we would take that deal every single day of the week up until the point where we couldn't afford it. So let's just say I was running my big eBay store, 50,000 items, selling 250, 300 items per day. 40% of my sales are attributed to promoted listings. And like, that's what's in the budget. I'm okay with that. Everything is great. Like, I'm happily paying eBay an extra $100,000 in fees to get an extra $1 million in sales. Like, I'm good with that. I've got it all figured out. We're getting our listings up. Like, I finally have conquered the eBay machine. And then they change a policy like this overnight. And I did the math, and I think like if all of my items were attributed to promoted listing sales, which is what eBay is trending, trying to do, like it's crystal clear and apparent to me, like that's what they're trying to do. It would have cost me overnight, by just the change of a policy, overnight, no wrongdoing of myself. I didn't break any laws. I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't break any rules. Always did the right thing. Overnight, it would have cost me an additional $125,000 in fees. And that came from straight bottom line profit. So like, let's say my profit was, just as a round number, like 500,000. I'm bringing home 375. Let's say my profit was 125,000. Now I'm breaking even. Like, it would have cost me, without no wrongdoing, didn't do anything wrong, always followed policy outside of my control, I would have had to taken a pay cut of $125,000 a year if 60% more of my sales fell into the promoted listings due to clicks from people who didn't purchase, and then somebody else comes and buys. So it doesn't matter, like that's the example, but like there's all of these different things that happen inside of our business that, we must climb and we must overcome. And I think that we have to understand, and we have to know that when we get to the top of the mountain, as soon as we reach over the top and look over that ledge, there's an even bigger mountain behind it. And that's okay. And that's the way it works. And that's what should be expected. And if you have the mentality of like, we need to expect the unexpected, we need to expect for something to kick us down and make us start over. Like, I was at my most nervous when everything was going right. That's when I was at my most nervous. My most precarious was when everything was going right and things were sailing a little bit too smooth, because I knew something is coming. Something is coming that's going to knock me over and make me reinvent everything that we're doing right now today, whether it's a policy, maybe, I'm getting inventory from somewhere and I'm no longer getting inventory from there. I knew something, some way, somehow was going to knock me over and make me start again from zero. Like, the amount of times that I've been knocked over and had to start all over again while still trying to maintain and keep everything afloat and continue to move forward, like I've lost count. Like, all the way back in the beginning of my reselling career, things changed. I had to reinvent myself. I had to pivot. I've pivoted hundreds of times in my eBay career, so much so that my username here is Tech and Sports, and I don't even sell tech no more. Like, I started out on eBay selling electronics, selling broken computers, selling video games, selling cell phones, selling all of these kinds of things. And one day it became not viable. Like, one day they started keeping track of, ESN numbers and IMEI numbers. And I would go out there and buy phones on Craigslist that were perfectly fine. I would call T-Mobile and say, hey, is this ESN clean? They would go, it's good to go, Roger, you're great. I sell it on eBay. The person I bought it from, a month and a half, 2 months later, reports it's stolen, so they can get a new phone from their insurance. They have my money 2 months ago, and now the customer is unhappy because they have a stolen phone, where when I called T-Mobile, they said, you're good to go. So like, I had to reinvent. Otherwise, I would crumble and go out of business. So like, I figured out, a better way, a least resistant way to make more money. And that was, fortunately, luckily enough, by, some kind of reseller graces, I was flat broke after running like, 6-figure business selling electronics. You know, back then I had a lot of, personal things going on that I had to raise money for. And as soon as I got enough money, it would reset me back to zero, get enough money, reset me back to zero again, getting kicked month after month, reach that mountain of raising, 10,000 bucks. And then you got a $10,000 bill right back to zero. And it's just constantly getting kicked over and kicked back down the mountain just to get to the top and go back down again, where, I was forced to sell my clothes from my own closet that I've had since high school. And one faithful day, I listed a vintage champion Andre Reed Buffalo Bills jersey, and it sold immediately for $68.88. Just so happened it was the same week he was getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I told my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, about, how quickly this item sold from my own closet. And she said, why don't we try to go to the thrift store? And I didn't even cross my mind to do that, but we went to the thrift, and inside of there was a Wilson Authentic Pro Line stitched, beautiful jersey, $250. Dan Marino for $5, put it on eBay, $250 almost immediately. And here's yet another time, like a micro kick down the mountain. I remember not having a lot of stuff, not having a lot of money, renting a room. My son didn't have a bed. He used to sleep on the couch. I remember selling that jersey, that Dan Marino jersey, for $250. I remember the guy needed it for the game. It was a Friday I sold the jersey. He needed it for the game on Sunday. I remember paying overnight, sold it to him, return request on Monday. He didn't like it, didn't fit. Item not as described, probably. A fake item not as described, false item not as described. And I remember he sent it back to me, and it had mustard stains on it, and it smelled like beer. So at the time, a $250 sale was everything to me. Probably already spent the money, didn't have the money anymore. And then a couple of days later, opens up a false item not as described. It was an item not as described because I remember I had to reimburse the $25 for overnight mail that he asked for. And I wasn't allowed to withhold it because it was a false, or because it was an item not as described. And it had mustard on it from a pretzel or a hot dog. It had stains on the back from sitting on a seat and rubbing around. And it literally smelled like alcohol, smelled like beer. And I had no choice but to give him a refund, even though probably didn't have the money. And I had to reimburse the overnight mail that it initially took. So, you get kicked down. But if you stick with it long enough, and you study, you learn, you try to get better, you try to take a chance or two, take a calculated chance or two, things eventually do fall in place. But like, to think this is going to be easy, to think that we're just going to do one climb and we're set forever, like, that's not the case. And I try to come on here and give like the most amount of like firsthand advice that I can. Like, I try to come on here and keep it real with everybody, and like I try to come on here and like share a lot of the experiences. And I think, like a lot of people, we think this is so easy. We think it just rains down from the sky. We think, it's just out there for everybody, and you don't have to do a bunch of work, or you don't have to do a bunch of effort. But like, the amount of times that I got reset to zero, or the amount of times that I got reset, or the amount of times that I had to pivot, think quickly, figure something out, have a plan B, is like incalculable. Like, I cannot even remember as many times as it took to get into the form that you see today. And the form that you see today will have to be reinvented. The form that you see today will have to be pivoted, improved upon, switched up. And that's just what happens. And I think that, I think like the moral of this story is, like, we can't expect, first of all, it to be easy. We can't expect this to be get rich quick. We can't even expect it to be get rich for sure. But like, we can't expect that the way it is today is the way that it's going to be forever. We can't expect that if we figured something out that works right now, that our mission is complete, we could pack it up and go home, and that's the way it's going to work forever. Like, reselling has evolved and reinvented itself so many times just in the 15 or 17 years that I've done it. And I think that if we had to go out another 15 years from now, it's not even going to look remotely close to what it is today. And if you look around at the world, and like for me, I'm 41 years old, like I'm not a spring chicken. Like I graduated in 2002, but like when I graduated in 2002, like I didn't have a cell phone. And if you look at like the way that the internet has transformed the world, the way that cell phones have transformed the world, like the first iPhone was released in 2007, like 20 years ago almost. And like the world is drastically different. It's not even close to the same world it was 15 or 20 years ago. Now, everybody has a cell phone. Like 4-year-olds got cell phones. Like these things are strapped to our body, where once upon a time, you know, we used to live with technology. Now technology is our life. And like now, currently, like we're living with AI, and like it hasn't even fully rolled out or been implemented, but like we're living with AI. But one day AI will rule our life in the same way that cell phones do, in the same way that technology does, in the same way that internet does. And it's going to begin to move so fast that we're all going to have to try to keep up. And no matter how fast we are, no matter how much we've got figured out, we got to try our absolute best to stay ahead of the curve, because it's going to move so fast. And just yesterday was 2002, and like I was graduating high school. Like the world moves fast. Just yesterday my son was born and he was up to my knee, and now the guy is 6'3" and I look up to him. Like it moves so quickly. The 15 plus years I've been on eBay has moved so quickly. And inside of all of that time has been trials and tribulations and start overs and successes and getting kicked down and starting over and pivoting so many times. And we have to understand that like this isn't forever. Like the capacity that we see it right now is not forever. Like this rule that has been implemented for promoted listings in Europe, if it does roll out to the United States, which we don't know if it will, there's no indication that it may, but you know, it worked in Germany, so they rolled it out to Europe. If it works in Europe and Australia, maybe they roll it out here. I don't know. But eventually they will roll something out that will drastically and dramatically impact your business. And we can complain about it. We can write comments about it. We can go to Reddit. There's a lot of comments on a video that I put out recently about this policy. A lot of comments complaining. My response to them is, now what? We can complain. We can vent our frustration. We can do all of that. We are free to do all of that. But now what? Now what are we going to do? We need to figure out a way how to make sure that our business can survive and thrive, as all of these other places are forcing us to take a smaller profit on items that we're selling. So realistically, there's two ways to do this. One is to all of these things that are, you know, death of a million paper cuts, getting a couple of pennies here, a couple of dollars there, $10 here, $12 here, $2, 50 cents, like all of these things that are grabbing at our profit, we can absorb them two ways. One way is to just sell more items at the same price that we're doing today. Absorb it with volume. A lot of people don't want to do that. A lot of people don't want to do more work for the same amount of money, which is something that I have been calling for 7 or 8 years now. Like I've been telling everybody, hey, we're going to have to do more work for the same amount of money. Been saying that for 7 years. People didn't like it in the comments then. They're not going to like it in the comments now. The alternative to that is you have to sell items with a larger margin, a larger profit, where you can afford to give all of these people who have their hand out an extra percent, an extra portion, whether it be the post office, whether it be eBay, whether it be this or that. There's a lot of things that we have to consider when it comes to our profit and it comes to our bottom line. Like if you have a business and you have a storage unit, that price goes up every year. You have a little helper, an employee, they're going to want to raise. You sell on eBay, the fees go up. Not direct, they're not direct increasing final value fees. They don't do that very often. However, they just did about 60 or 90 days ago. They increased the final value fee in most categories by 0.35%. But that fee constantly goes up in ways like tacking on promoted listings on everything. That fee goes up every single time the post office price goes up. Because if the post office price goes up, and it does 3 times a year, you can put it on your calendar right next to your birthday. Your birthday is here, post office increase, post office increase, post office increase, 3 times a year. Happens once around June. It happens once just before the holidays for a holiday increase. And it happens once on or around January 20th, 3 times a year without fail. And the one that just happened, in June coming up, that's going to be about a 5% increase across the board, 6 to 7% increase for priority mail and ground advantage, which is the service that most of us use. So right there, we're losing 6 or 7% on our shipping due to a 6 or 7% increase, where every single time the post office increases, again, we have 2 choices. We can absorb that cost, keep our shipping price the same, and pay 6 or 7% more, which might be 15, 20, 40 cents additional per label, however it shakes out. But at scale, hundreds of packages at 25 cents more, it adds up very quickly. Or we raise our shipping price so we don't have to absorb that label. But what happens after that? eBay charges a final value fee on shipping. So if your shipping was $5, you're paying a final value fee on $5. If you raise your shipping fee to $6 because you don't want to absorb the increased label, you're paying eBay a final value fee on $6. So like eBay, by adjacent ways, has raised their fee exponentially in the last 10 years without ever coming out and raising the fee. Promoted listings fee was a fee raise. Every single time the post office goes up, that's a fee raise. Putting minimum promoted listings from 1 to 2, that's a fee raise. For Halo promoted listings, that's a fee raise. For the people in the UK who they are attributing sales to buyers who don't even buy the item, that's a fee increase. And all of these things are attacking us from so many places, and we have to be able to weather the storm and climb the next mountain. And you have 2 choices that you have to ask yourself. Am I going to absorb this with more volume? Meaning, I list 20 a day. Now I got to list 22 to make the same amount of money. People don't want to do that, but ultimately that's what they have to do. Or we talk about getting a $20 profit, and let's say your cost of goods is $5. You sell something for 30, just roundabout back of the napkin math. $5 went to cost of goods, around $5 went to fees, and then you would net $20 profit. Like a $30 sale to get $20, you might have to sell an item for $40 now to get $20 after promoted listings fees, after an increased fee on shipping, so on and so forth, after an increased cost of goods at the thrifts. Like 30 might be the new 40, might be the new 30. And that just might be the reality going forward. And then we get squeezed by the thrifts who are going to take out all the items that sell for $40 or more, using all of their applications and softwares and running it on Whatnot, because they're doing that. Goodwill and Salvation Army both are running Whatnot shows. We're catching it from every direction, and every single direction we're going to catch it. And we have to be excellent problem solvers, and we have to be excellent fortune tellers to know what is going to happen in the future to us that is going to impact our business. So that way we're never playing from behind, we're always playing from ahead. So if I was still running my world domination store and I was faced with the choice of now potentially having $125,000 or so increase in fees overnight, if this policy was rolled out to the United States, I have a question to ask myself. Am I going to do more volume, or am I going to go out there and find better items? And if I saw this policy rolling out in Europe, I would not sit tight. I would not just wait and see. I would not be reactive. I would be proactive. I would be doing everything in my power to get my business up and running and prepared. So if this does roll out, I'm ready for it. And I would be putting things into motion, and it might roll out next week. It might roll out next month. It might roll out in 6 months. It might roll out in never. I don't know. We don't know. But they're telling us what they're doing in other markets. They're telling us what their strategy is. Like, they're showing us their hand in the poker game. And like, when they're showing us this stuff, we have no choice but to listen. Just like how the thrift stores, they're telling us what they're going to do. They're going to put this stuff online. They're going to put this stuff on their own auction sites. They're going to put this stuff on their own whatnot. They're going to put this stuff in their own pallets, their own blue boxes. Like, they're telling us what they're going to do. We have to listen. We can't be stunned at the end of the day when it finally happens, where you can't walk into the air-conditioned, Taylor Swift over the radio, doors open for you, voluntarily giving you profitable inventory. Like, we can't be shocked and surprised when that day does come, because it will come eventually. Might not be today, might not be tomorrow. But again, look how fast and how much the world has changed in just the last handful of years. Like, COVID was 5 years ago. It feels like an eternity ago, but it wasn't even that long. And how much has changed since then? How much will change in the next 5 years? How much will change in the next 10 years? We talk about it. Like, eventually there will be programs that alert everybody of every single profitable item, within their vicinity that they could reach. Like, you'll be able to zap a row and it'll tell you what's there. When that happens, how are you going to get your inventory? And like, we could say, like, no one goes to my store, like, I'm the king of my store, or this and that. That's fine. But like, if 1 or 2 people started picking the stuff that you pick, what happens? You're in trouble. 1 person, you're in trouble. 2 or 3, you're in trouble. What happens when the thrift starts picking items that you pick? Because it's much easier for them, and they become much more efficient at processing, and they could do it much faster and don't really have to train anyone. All they got to do is look for a green light or hear a beep, and they're just going to put that item to the side. What happens then? And maybe they can't catch everything, but what happens when they catch 33%? What happens when they catch 50%? What happens when they catch 66%? What do you do then? And it doesn't matter if they take those items and they put them online, or they run them on whatnot, or they run them on their auction site. It doesn't matter if they lose money doing this. That doesn't matter. What matters is those items used to be there, presented to us, and they're no longer not. What happens when you go to the flea market and everyone is zapping things and everything is full retail? Like, that happens now. At my flea market has dramatically changed in the last 5 years since COVID. When COVID happened, everyone had to stop going to the flea market. After that, they raised the price. There used to be 1,000 people out there. Now there's about 100. A lot of people left because the price went up. And now the people that go out there, they're smarter, they're wiser, they're more savvy. They're not smarter, but they're more savvy because they got a computer in their pocket that they can zap everything Google Lens. Or the people that do storage auctions, who used to just turn over all the clothes to me because it was cumbersome and a burden, they do whatnot shows and sell everything in the whole unit and are making boatloads of money. And I'm not a hater. Great for them. I need to find out different ways to get inventory if they're going to go the whatnot route. And a lot of the storage vendors where I used to get a lot of my stuff, and if you are familiar with a flea market, these storage unit vendors are kind of like the lifeline, the blood of the flea market, the heart and soul of the flea market, where if they're getting a lot of units, all the other vendors shop from the storage unit people, and all the other vendors put that stuff on their table. But if the storage unit vendors are going straight to whatnot, that blood of the flea market, that heart and soul of the flea market is gone. And now the other vendors don't have great stuff. And now the other vendors go out of business. So like the storage unit people used to trickle a lot of great inventory to the entire flea market and really keep a lot of people and their businesses going at the market, which in turn kept our businesses going. And that's a pivot, that's a change. Once upon a time, I used to go to the flea market at 4 o'clock in the morning, stay there till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, sometimes 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 12 hours, fill up multiple cars. Used to have to strap stuff to the roof. Used to have to bring a trailer with my car. Now it's not the case. Now I fill up a car. Where before, I had 2 cars, SUVs, both of them had trailers, totes on the trailers, and then totes strapped to the roof. One day, Saturday. See you again Sunday, 2 more cars, 2 more trailers, 100 totes. Like, that has dramatically declined and has been different. So I had something figured out. I had a good thing going for me, and we were pumping on all cylinders. And a few years later, it's different. The bins are different. The thrifts are different. We figure out all of these things and get everything lined up, and we think we're on easy street, population 1. And then it changes. And I think that we have to expect that. We have to expect the unexpected. And if we're not expecting the unexpected, that's when we get surprised and shocked. And if you're surprised and shocked, you go out of business. If you cannot see the writing on the wall, if you cannot see what's coming, if you are not a fast mover or an early adopter, I think especially now is more important than ever. I think that gap between people that are successful and people that are not successful is going to widen very, very fast and very, very quickly. Because not only is inventory going to be harder to find, not only is the competition going to be stiffer because there's going to be, still a ton of people scratching and fighting for even less inventory. It's also going to get much easier to list the inventory. And people that used to list 20, maybe they list 30. People that used to list 30 might list 40. People that used to list 50 might list 500 a day. And there's going to be a time where reselling becomes very exciting when softwares take over and are able to list for you. And then there's going to come a time where reselling becomes very dark because a lot of people will go out of business. And it's going to get difficult. It's going to get tougher. There's going to be a mountain behind a mountain. And all of these things have to be overcome, and all of these things have to climb. So a lot of things that we talk about here, they eventually come true. I think I'm like 1,000 for 1,000. There will be a time in reselling where it is very exciting. Listings are done for you. Everything is good. You just got to go out and find it, snap a picture. The software will do it. Great titles, perfect item specifics. It'll price it for you. The category will be correct. You don't have to worry about title structure. You don't have to worry about keywords. You can list 20 items in 4.5 minutes and be done. It's going to be a very exciting time for people. But I think shortly after that, I think that's going to be very short-lived. And I think once the market catches up and the market is undefeated, I think we go from a very exciting time in reselling to a very dark time in reselling, because we are going to see a great divide in people that have adapted, been early adapters, first to market with the technology and the things that make reselling quote unquote better and easier. And we're going to see people build humongous stores. We're going to see markets get saturated. We're going to see items that were once upon a time thought to be rare, not so rare. We're going to see prices come down. And we're going to see who's able to climb that next mountain. Because that mountain, when that day comes, is going to be the biggest and the tallest mountain that we've ever seen in reselling. When the markets become saturated, the profit margins become smaller, the inventory becomes harder to come across, and people start to list more and more and more items every single day. It's going to turn $38 items to $18 items. It's going to turn $18 items into $8 items. It's going to turn and expose your sourcing very, very quickly. Because just because you have the ability to list items very quickly, you don't get credit for listing. You only get credits for items that sell. And you can list as many items as you want, as fast as you want, as automatically as you want, as quickly and effort-free as you want, even if they're perfect. If nobody wants those items, you don't get credit for that. So you will see people very excited to list bad items, and they will go out of business because all of their money is in inventory. It's not in their bank account. They're going to have 20,000 items that do not sell at $5 a pop, $100,000 sitting on eBay that nobody wants. And you cannot be in that position. So do not list items that nobody wants just because it's easy to list them. Continue to only list great items and just allow the listing to get easier. Do not list garbage because it's zero effort to list. That's not going to work. Sure, people will start to get more sales in the beginning. They're going to think it's great, but all they're doing is just throwing stuff against the wall. And if you throw enough against the wall, something will stick. So if people start firing up these machines and they start listing 50 or 100 items a day, 99% of it is garbage, some of the stuff will sell. And that's going to be the confusing part, is that people will get more sales, but their overabundance of inventory, their overabundance of items sitting on eBay that are not selling is what's going to cripple them and ultimately bury them. So utilize the technology whenever, however it comes out, to help you and boost you into listing more better items easier, not more garbage items with no effort. Don't do that. A lot of people will do that. And I'm sitting here and I'm saying that's not the move. And I've always kept it real with you guys and say, hey, when reselling is over, I'll tell you it's over. There's still a lot of life left in it. There's still a lot of money left to get. But we have to be smart. We have to be on the forefront. We have to be the early ones. We have to be out in front of everybody. Everybody's got to catch up to us. And I made a lot of money in my reselling career. I've made a lot of money in my other careers by being ahead of everybody else. If you could be a year ahead, 5 years ahead, if you could be multiple years ahead of everybody else, you will always win every single time. Because even if you're wrong a couple times, everyone else is still playing catch up. Just like back in the beginning of this call, when Louis told me the bills come every single day and I was working 7 days and everyone else was working 5, it allowed me to mess up from time to time because everyone else was catching up. When I was listing 120 items a day, I was doing that because I thought the entire world was listing 100 a day. I wanted to be ahead. And I listed 120 a day by myself because I thought everyone else was listing 100 a day. I wanted to be ahead. I wanted to have that cushion. When everyone thought it was impossible to have a 10,000 item store, I already had 20,000 items. Like I was always first to market in what was to come. And what's to come is it will get easier to list, easier to process. It's going to get harder to source. That's why we're talking about this now. That's why we're starting early. It's going to get harder to source. We need to start making these relationships now. We need to start working on this stuff today. Because maybe you don't need it today. Maybe you got a thrift store right now that provides for all of your needs. And again, you're on Easy Street, Main and Main, Beautifulville, population 1. Right now, you're at the top of that mountain. But you will get kicked down that mountain eventually. And you need to have a backup plan for that. And we need to start working on that plan today. Because we're going to make videos 5 years from now, just like I make videos today talking about what I told everyone 5 years ago. 5 years from now, we're going to point to these videos and the things that we've talked about week in and week out. And the people that listen, adapt, and are early doing it are going to be the most successful. You might not need to make relationships now. You might not need to work on alternative sourcing methods now. You might not need to do that now or today. It doesn't mean you can't start working on it. It doesn't mean you can't stop thinking about it. Like you have to put it into your head. You have to start putting these things in motion because sooner or later, if you sit here and say, my thrift store will never change, my sourcing will never dry up, and you believe that wholeheartedly, you are a fool. Everything changes. Everything evolves. Everything pivots. Just like for us, we've had to change, adapt, and overcome 100 times in our business. You don't think Goodwill got to do the same thing? You don't think Mom and Pop Incorporated got to do the same thing at their thrift? You don't think Caesar at the flea market got to do the same thing? All of these people have to overcome and adapt in the same way, same manner as us. And if we are not doing that in tangent, If we are not doing that in a manner to be ahead and stay ahead, then you're going to get left behind. The next 5 years are going to be pivotal to your success. The people that work on getting better, the people that work on doing more, the people that work on relationships, the people that work on all of these things that we're talking about, those people will continue to be successful. The people that don't, won't. It's very simple. One policy change can put you out of business overnight and you didn't do nothing wrong. There are a lot of people already that was promoting themselves out of business. There are a lot of people that will officially be out of business with this policy change in Europe and in Australia because they simply cannot afford an extra 5 or 7 or 10%. They cannot afford it. The margins are getting too tight. And they don't want to increase in volume, or they don't know how to increase in volume. So if we know the volume game is coming, if we know that might be one of the options that you need to choose, we need to start preparing and getting ready for that. If we know the I need to pick up better items game is for me, then we need to start preparing for that. How can we prepare for that? We need to get our processes in order to streamline and do more volume. We need to get our relationships in order, streamlined, so that way we can get more product. We need to become more knowledgeable, more efficient in our craft. How do we get better items that the 40 is the new 30? We better be studying. We better have an education. We better have control of some kind of inventory, like I talked about a couple of weeks ago on a podcast. You need to have some kind of allocation of inventory that is untouched only for you. How can you do that? Flea markets. How can you do that? Ear to the streets. How can you do that? Networking, relationships, all of the things that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. We need to start working on these two things. If we are not, we are finished, toast, and it's over. Consider this mountain that you've climbed the last mountain for you, because when you slide down, it's finished and you're over. So this thing is constantly evolving. The ones that can evolve the best are the ones that are going to win. The ones that are dead set, stuck in their ways, they're gone. They're talking about the good old days. And if you talk to someone who's got the same story every single time that you talk to them, you should probably start talking to different people. Because I don't want to talk to someone where every single time I talk to them, they tell me the same thing. We need to evolve. We need to get better. We need to have a hunger for improvement. And it doesn't start today. It's not a motivational thing. It's a principle thing inside of our own being, where we need to make sure that we are doing the best for our business and providing the most for our business as the direct representative of our business. That is our job. So we need to think about these things. We need to understand that this thing ain't fixed. It's not one way forever. It will constantly evolve and change. And every single time that you reach the precipice of one mountain and you think that you made it, remember always that there's a mountain right behind it. I hope this video finds everybody well. As always, be great. Thank you.